Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
I've done a little theatrical work.
Ken Yorgan of I-Racine is an independent candidate in the 1st U.S. House District. Ken, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here.
You're an independent. Why aren't you a D or an R, sir?
Well, I just couldn't get in with the argument. I don't know. It seems like the Democrats and the Republicans want to create this idea that they hate each other and they're fighting constantly, and I didn't want to be a part of that. And also, it's very difficult to run as a party candidate. They have a primary, and they eliminate what I think oftentimes is a better candidate in favor of somebody that the party has pre-selected. And I think we see that just this year with both parties. We've got Randy Bryce, who was preordained by the Democrats, and Brian Stile, who actually kind of entered the race a little bit late, but was immediately the favorite because he received the endorsement of Paul Ryan. So I didn't fit in with either of those particular modes. I'm independent. Most people are independent, and so I'm running on behalf of most people.
Tell me, now that you've been campaigning in the 1st U.S. House District, tell me what you've learned about the district and its biggest needs, sir.
Well, I think not just the district, the 1st District of Wisconsin, but the nation in general has a great need to address health care. And being a chiropractic physician, that's of course something that's near and dear to my heart. But it has a tremendous impact on the economy. It has a tremendous impact just on the well-being of our people, on the well-being of American citizens. The results that we're getting through the healthcare paradigm that we have now, I hesitate to call it a system, but the results that we're getting right now are quite frankly embarrassing for one of the wealthiest nations in the world. Now, I don't even know if we are the wealthiest anymore, but for a nation of our economy, our innovation, our history, to have the healthcare results that we're getting from what we have, it's just abysmal.
Well, your campaign website calls for Medicare for all. So you're in favor of that. How would we get there? And what about the cost estimates of trillions of dollars that you and I have heard? Now, I'm not saying they're accurate, but you and I have heard that. So how would we get to Medicare for all?
Well, it would take a transition. It's not something that you can just do bang like that and the next day everybody has Medicare. It does require some thought and some planning and some implementation. It's a process that quite honestly would take probably several years to perfect. But I think probably from day one it would be an improvement over what we have. The private insurance industry, the for-profit insurance industry that we have right now has done a poor job as stewards of our money. And I think that we just need to use the government as a group purchasing plan, basically. Funnel the financing through a government agency, and Medicare is already set up to do that. So I think that's the route that we need to take.
Well, as a medical professional, is Medicare a fairly efficient system or not so much?
Well, let me say it's greatly improved. Now, when you talk about efficiency, there's different areas that you would have to speak to in terms of efficiency. In terms of financial efficiency, Medicare is far more efficient than private industry. I mean, the overhead expense for Medicare, the administrative cost for Medicare, typically runs like between 1% and 2%. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, administrative costs in the private insurance industry could soar as high as 40%. So, you know, people talk about that's not very conservative, putting something under government, but what's conservative about paying 40% for something that you can buy for 2%? So I think it makes very powerful economic sense.
You mentioned the Affordable Care Act. Was that a step forward in terms of the long-range goals that you'd like to see in the health care of this nation?
Yeah, I believe so, but there was so much arguing that ensued over that by the time the sausage came out of the machine, it was hardly recognizable from the original intent, which was, I believe the original intent was a single-payer system. But there was just no hope of that happening at that point in history.
What about the changes since then? The deletion of the individual mandate, and the financial penalty if you don't have it, those are no longer there. And now we have a federal lawsuit that Wisconsin is participating in that aims to strike down the Affordable Care Act. So.
Well, again, I mean, it's an argument and it's a mess, and we really should transition to a single-payer system, and Medicare is the best model for that. Now, we're going to have to, if we do that, we're going to have to reschedule all the procedures that are out there. There are some forms of health care that are not included right now. My profession of chiropractic is not fully included. Therapeutic massage, acupuncture, naturopathy, there are some other things that are very, very valuable forms of health care that are not included in traditional insurance. And you got to go back to the history of insurance. Health insurance was actually created in the 20s and 30s by a group of physicians in Boston, I believe it was. And what they wanted to do was create a possibility for people who were unable to afford care on a pay-as-you-go basis to access the care that they were providing. It's an unspoken thing, but it also created a more consistent revenue stream for the providers. Now, since it was created by the medical community, who in the devil would expect them to include other things like chiropractic or massage or acupuncture? I mean, it's just not in their mindset. So it was an enterprise. It wasn't necessarily purely to provide health care for everybody.
You mentioned phasing in health care for all over a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
There would be a cost to that. Would you change our nation's tax structure to pay for that transition, and if so, how?
Well, absolutely. And I think probably the simplest thing to do would be to create a sales tax. Now, anytime you talk about tax, people get uptight. It's like, oh my God, more taxes. I already pay enough taxes. Pardon me.
That's okay.
But you have to take into consideration that you'll be paying taxes, but you'll no longer be paying insurance premiums, which is a big deal. Also, it would affect your automobile policy. Medical expenses related to automobile injuries and automobile insurance, that's a big chunk of money. So there are all kinds of things where savings would be given to us or afforded to us. It's not just an expense.
The projection that Social Security is going to run out of money, that's a few years away, but how would you fix that, sir?
Well, I don't know that it's true that it's going to run out of money. If we go back to the origins of Social Security, it was specified in the Act. It's for workers in industry and commerce. So basically it was a working man's insurance plan for retirement. Now virtually everybody, once they reach age, begins collecting Social Security, whether they truly need it or not. Now I understand, I mean, I paid into that system and I want to get my money out. I want to get what I paid for. I understand that, but that's not the concept that it was founded under. It was founded to look after people who were retiring with no means of taking care of themselves. It was not meant to be a supplemental income for people who were already able to exist comfortably.
So, did I hear you say that we need to means test Social Security?
Well, yeah, we probably should restructure it in some way or another. I know there's some people that are going to say the wealthiest people already pay the bulk of all the taxes. Well, they've got all the money, and I heard an interesting comment the other day by Jesse Ventura, former governor of our neighboring state, Minnesota. He says, maybe we shouldn't be worried about a minimum wage. Maybe we should worry more about a maximum wage. And the concept being that who the devil is worth $200 million a year? I mean, what do you set as a maximum? Just because you're able to doesn't mean it's a good idea. That's a good phrase to live by. Just because you're able to gather great sums of wealth to yourself, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should. I mean, we can hold up Jeff Bezos and the Walton family, who employ many, many thousands of individuals, many of whom are on food stamps and Medicaid. Why? Why should they be growing so tremendously wealthy, collecting so much wealth, while taxpayers are subsidizing their operations? Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, is that one of the reasons why you say you will not accept any corporate donations? Why?
Yeah, that's one reason, because once you accept corporate donations, I think you're beholden to look after their interest. And plus, I don't think they're going to offer me any donations because they know that I'm not going to be exclusively interested in their interest. They know that I'm a candidate of the people, ordinary people.
Your campaign site also say you want to you would end the war on drugs. Why?
Well, specifically the war on cannabis.
The war on cannabis.
Yeah, most specifically the war on cannabis.
Yes.
That was, I don't know if you know the history of that at all, but it was founded on very, very racist intentions. And people don't understand that. They need to go back and look at that a little bit. I mean, the guy who was the very first drug czar, a fellow by the name of Harry Anslinger. I mean, there are quotes by this guy that says, you know, smoking marijuana makes darkies think they're as good as white people. And I mean, that was reflective of his attitude and of his personality. And social control was a big part of the incentive behind criminalizing marijuana. Marijuana wasn't even really the name of it, it was cannabis, but they began using marijuana because they thought it would more easily associate cannabis with the Mexican population, which is one of the populations that they wanted to keep control of. Also, there are many things about the plant, cannabis. I mean, hemp is also basically the same plant. There are many industrial products, food products, medicinal products, so on and so forth, that are available through hemp, which was collectively with marijuana made illegal, prohibited. It's been a big mistake, and we need to correct that mistake, and I think we just repeal that law. You know, I mean, we have laws against criminal behavior. Smoking pot or growing hemp as an industrial product is really not criminal behavior. Another thing Anslinger said was the most violence-producing substance in the history of mankind. And then he had another quote, it creates pacifism, excuse me, creates pacifism and communist brainwashing. So what is it? Is it going to create the most violence, or is it going to make you pacifistic? You know, I mean, he was all over the map with it, and he was the first drug czar. He set the tone for the criminalization of marijuana and for the war on drugs. So it's been an unfortunate thing. It's been extremely costly, and we need to bring it to a conclusion.
You're running for Congress. One of the big impasses in Congress is immigration. Where are you on what immigration reform should look like and the president's request to build a wall?
Well, I don't think the wall is a solution. I know there are people who would disagree with me on that, but I mean, even today we're hearing stories about people who are coming from foreign countries to the south, flying into Canada and coming across the northern border. So what are you going to do? You're going to build a wall between us and Canada next? I mean, I think we need to tighten up our security a little bit, but building a wall is not the solution. So and it would be a tremendously expensive endeavor too. And an environmental catastrophe. I mean, it would disrupt a lot of migratory patterns for wild animals that wander back and forth, a natural part of the environment.
How would you respond to the question of the dreamers? Young people here?
Yeah, well, you know, that should be coming to a conclusion. I mean, these were young people who were brought here through no effort of their own. They were brought by their parents.
Right.
So I think that law was meant to protect those who came here as young people. And so how many years ago was that?
I don't know, but should dreamers be given an opportunity to become citizens?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't think there are that many of them, for one thing, and they've never known any other country. So yeah, absolutely they should be given the opportunity.
What about adults that are not here legally? Should they be given a path to citizenship? If so, what steps along that path?
Well, I kind of like the idea of this guest worker idea or temporary visas or whatever, because a lot of the people who are here illegally are performing valuable services. They really are, and they are paying taxes. I mean, they're not just sucking off of the system. The net impact of even those illegal immigrants is an economic benefit to the United States. Now, they did break the law, so, you know, I mean, that's a very, very difficult situation to confront, very difficult. It's above my pay scale as a congressman if I get there, I know that. I would be a part of the conversation, and I favor being compassionate whenever we can, but we also have to be compassionate for the American citizens and those who might be subject to criminal activity on the part of illegals.
Some Democrats in the U.S. House mentioned the possibility of beginning impeachment proceedings against President Trump. When they say that, how do you respond?
I would not enter the House of Representatives with any kind of an agenda either for or against impeachment. I think that's a big mistake. Now, I've heard of a lot of things that say he's done this, he's done that, these are impeachable offenses. Somebody in the House needs to organize that. It wouldn't be me as a freshman congressman. I wouldn't be going there with the idea of impeaching the president. And I wouldn't be going there with the idea of defending him either. You know, I think that's for people who are already familiar with the situation, and if crimes have been committed, they've already been committed, or there wouldn't be that talk. But I'm not privy to that information, and I don't want to pass judgment for or against the president. I would go in with an open mind. If he's done nothing criminal, done nothing impeachable, he has nothing to fear from me. If he has, he will find no more resolute opponent to him. So that's where I stand.
The president's tariffs, both with North America, Canada, and Mexico, and China, your position on his tariffs?
Well, tariffs used to be a primary source of revenue for the federal government. That was replaced by income tax primarily. Tariffs now, unfortunately, all they're going to do is raise the price of goods coming into the country, because if a 25% tariff is slapped onto something, the television that you were going to buy for $100 or whatever is now going to cost you $125. Well, where does that $25 go? I mean, it has a tremendous impact on the purchasing power of the United States public. So what is done with that money? Well, I've heard that some of that money is being used to subsidize, for example, farmers, which is good. But if you talk to farmers, farmers don't want to be subsidized. They want to work, they want to grow their produce, their products, and they want to sell them at a fair market value. You know, you'll talk to farmers, and I don't think you'll find much support for tariffs. I don't personally support tariffs very much at all. I'm primarily opposed to them. I mean, there are situations where there could be an extreme condition that needs to be addressed, and a tariff might be the only way of doing it. But by and large, I think they're a bad idea.
I want to give you a chance. We've discussed several issues. Any issues centrally to the campaign that I haven't brought up yet? This is a chance to surface those.
Well, I mean, we could reflect back to health care, and particularly mental health care. Okay. I mean, we have a terrible problem with mental health issues in this country. And I think one very, very important thing that we should do is we should separate what is a mental health issue and what is criminal behavior. Because a lot of times these things will overlap, and people who genuinely have mental health issues, their first point of contact with the civilization at large, with the population at large, is through law enforcement. Law enforcement is not really equipped to confront mental health issues, and we've had some very, very bad results because of that. Now, I sympathize with the law enforcement officers as much as I do with the people who have mental health issues and in that confrontation. I mean, they are not trained. They don't know what to expect when they're going into a mental health situation. And we should not be relying upon them and imposing upon them to deal with that problem. So, you know, mental health is like, that's a big one, a very big one. And it's not addressed under the current healthcare paradigm. So that's very, very big.
Two final questions. Would you change the nation's gun laws in light of some of these tragedies in schools and elsewhere in mass shootings?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the gun laws that we have, if they're properly enforced, are probably adequate. And again, we're going to go right back to mental health, because mental health overlaps with gun possession in a very, very terrible way. A lot of the mass shootings that we've had have been done by people who are obviously struggling with mental health issues. As far as the gun people versus the non-gun people, people who own guns care just as much about their fellow citizens and about these massacres that have taken place as people who don't own guns. So I think right now we've got a little bit of a lull. You know, I mean, we haven't had a major crisis here recently, although one could be happening as we're speaking. I think now is a good time to bring people to the table, gun owners, non-owners, and have a reasonable discussion about what we can do to bring this under control.
And then final question is, why are you a better choice on November 6th than Mr. Stile or Mr. Bryce?
Well, quite honestly, I don't pay a lot of attention to what they're saying. I know that they're major party candidates, and I don't like the way the major parties are run. I think that they become beholden to the party rather than to the people, and running as an independent avoids that. In fact, I know that there are some good people from both parties that now are in the House of Representatives. Whether they will make it through this election or not, I don't know. But if I get to Washington, D.C., I intend to reach out to them and form some kind of a coalition between independent thinking Democrats and Republicans and people like myself who ran as neither. And that could be a force to be reckoned with.
Thank you. Ken Yorgan of Racine is an independent candidate for the first U.S. House seat. The election is November 6th. Ken, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you, and thank you to the audience.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.